Welcome to episode 4 of the Greens podcast. You guys made it.
Hey! Thanks for having us on.
Of course. I'm so happy you guys are on. Let's start things off with a little bong ripper, yeah?
Let's do
Let's
it.
do it. We got the Mota glass here, nice and clean and already packed. Cheers to my guests for episode 4. Cheers to you guys.
Bong cheers.
Yes, bong cheers.
I love your glass.
Thank
It just
you.
feels so nice. It's heavy.
Oh yeah, this piece. People always ask me about it. So it's a reverse UFO, and usually people are like, "Does it percolate?" Right? No, this is actually a splash guard because sometimes if you pull really hard, I've been left with some splashback. So this is actually a guard for that, and it also looks pretty cool and scientific. You know.
That's cool.
So this tastes pretty good. This is Team Elite Genetics. The strain is called White Bronco. It's a 50-50 hybrid. I actually got this at their Hall of Flowers event. Team Elite Genetics did a really cool like strain food pairing experience. It was really cool. So they gave like a little baggie of just different strains to pair with different foods. And you guys know all about that. What did you guys do at Hall of Flowers this year?
It was actually really cool. Kind of playing off of what you're saying. I saw so much more focus around culinary arts, and
Yes.
it wasn't like, oh, get stoned and get some random munchies. It was very intentional curation around like bringing in food connoisseurship and bringing in all these different regional expressions of people doing things throughout the country with weed and cannabis and with food. And it was really, really amazing to see what Sonoma Hill Farms all put together. It was a whole hall just dedicated to that, you know, and there was like the more chill and tasting part of it. And then there were different sessions, you know, around food demonstrations. The setup was amazing because they had these cameras like overhead. So it wasn't just like you were far away in the audience listening. You were engaged and you were able to really see what was happening throughout the cooking process.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
the
exciting.
Sonoma Hills culinary experience at Hall of Flowers was like almost like a mini food festival stage at Hall of Flowers. It was in this separate building. And so we were invited to be part of the programming. Wendy's was one of the featured chefs alongside these other like really famous chefs like Chris Constantino and Tamil Maria and Chef Preeti made this like a tikka mac and cheese that was outrageous. There was a fried chicken dinner. And so Wendy and I, Sonoma Hills invited us to be on stage to kind of talk
I
about
saw that.
Mogu Magu
Yes.
and what we're doing. And so Wendy made her famous spicy Sichuan garlic noodles. And we talked about like the aromas and the flavors and like the connection between spices and garlic and cannabis and how they work with like the science of our endocannabinoid receptors. And so that was really cool. It was like a history of cannabis plus food plus sensory plus this like science and the history of cannabis through it. So there was a lot going on. But
Oh, it's so great to see
was so cool.
cannabis just getting outside of
Yeah.
just being this like little corner stoner like thing, you know?
That was like where I wanted to spend all my time. Like that's like where like it was all the good food, all
Yeah.
the fun chefs. Like we got to pair her spicy garlic noodles with Chris Constantino's spicy arugula. So he did like
Ooh.
a special blend with CBG, high CBD that was like specifically like for anxiety, but it had that like spicy mouthfeel that was tingly, very similar to the Sichuan peppercorn that Wendy's so famous for cooking with.
Yeah, we brought all the spices. We
Yes.
had like people were bringing them around so folks could like smell the spices we were using. I'm really big on using whole spices sourced from my hometown,
Yeah.
which I was just
Wait, what are
visiting.
whole spices and what is it? What
Like when you buy your spices in their whole form, you know.
Oh, okay.
So like Sichuan peppercorn, as Christina was mentioning, it's like this. It looks like this, and
I like how you
it's-
have them on your body so you can actually show them. That's amazing. A lot of people
And-
have stuff on their phones saved. I love how it's just like point a piece of your body. Yeah.
Well, it's where I'm from, so it's like a little piece of home, and I really love cooking with it because it's not just a flavor, it's really a sensation because the Sichuan peppercorn buds actually vibrate your taste buds, so you're feeling things and you're tasting things, and it
Sensory
just
experience.
exactly, and it's what I love making when I'm making my infused oils.
Yeah.
I actually made a chili oil on Chop 420 that I got to take on to use in the competition.
Yeah.
And it was made with like Sichuan chili flakes and Sichuan peppercorns. So all these peppers and flavors that I grew up with extracted and with cannabis infused. So there was a lot of synergistic effects. And so that's part of what we also, the conversation that we brought to Hall of Flowers is how do you use these kind of ingredients that we've always grown up with our family's home cookings, and what about those ingredients also having in common and help promote some of the similar effects that are present in the flowers.
Yeah. Wow, it's so amazing. And I'm just so glad that we're getting to this point, like I mentioned before. But before we get too deep into more stuff, first want to get a little more of an intro and a professional intro, if you may. Mostly because we all know you, the community all knows you. We all know Fruit and Flower and Wendy from, what you guys do. But would love to know, if you can give us a quick little intro about who you are, what you do in the space.
Yeah. Hey, I'm Christina, and I am I'm the founder, creative director, whatever. I'm Fruit and Flower on Instagram, and Fruit and Flower is my creative studio to basically explore the world of culinary cannabis. And I'm a content creator, I'm a writer, I'm a bud tender, I'm a wellness consultant. I'm a PR consultant. I do so many things, events, baking. And ultimately, all of it is in pursuit of using food to help teach people how to choose better cannabis products for themselves and how to use this plant as medicine.
So you're saying that you use basically food and that sensory experience to remind people that cannabis is also a sensory experience.
It can be, that's part of it, but it's also, the analogy of do you care about where your food comes from? Do you care about who grows your food or how it was grown? Then you should care about your cannabis in the same way. And at least make conscious choices. We know what's the difference between orange soda versus fresh squeezed orange juice.
Right.
And if you take that analogy and you think about the products that are available in the cannabis space, now you can make an informed decision as somebody going into the store so that you get to make smarter choices about what you're putting in your body.
Oh yeah, just like you go to the grocery store and you go with organic, it's about making that conscious decision. I love that. Thank you for the work that you do, Christina. You're really helping to elevate cannabis. A little bit about yourself.
Hi, I'm Wendy. I'm a chef in the cannabis space. Not exclusively, but I'm a chef that has, started to incorporate cannabis in my cooking. And similar to Christina, it's really important to me to focus on educating folks to have a more informed and intentional consumption journey. And so through the spaces and experiences that Christina and I create together and the other collaborators I have in the space, whether it's food or cannabis, we create these really, really fun community events that exactly do that mission. So one of the things I do is run the Secret Garden Club in LA, where we do host things like Mogu Magu and the Latinas in Cannabis Powerhouse Dinner that we should catch up on later. Is creating these consumption-friendly spaces where folks can who don't also smoke cannabis but have friends who do, who have family members that do, and I think that's what makes it very community oriented, because it's not just about coming to sesh together, it's being seen, it's incorporating other parts of who we are through the gathering and the communing.
Yes, I love that. So this gathering and communion, I love gathering community with you too, but also the community that you really facilitate is just beautiful. So tell us about Mogu Magu. You touched on it a little bit. Where did it begin? And also just take a step back. Where did you guys meet?
Yeah. Yeah. So Wendy and I met and became friends maybe 3 years ago.
Oh my gosh, it
3
feels
years
like
ago.
it's been so much longer.
Yeah, we actually met on Instagram. We slid into the DMs. And it was at a time when we were both really kind of like needing each other friends. We didn't even know that yet. It was like really the beginning of my journey in this cannabis industry. And I had met a lot of other AAPIs. And for the first time, we were getting together to host like a businessing networking event with all the AAPIs in the cannabis industry.
Yes.
And Wendy and I met online because we were both a part of this like on Instagram cook-off, like cannabis chef cook-off competition that was hosted by our friend Rachel Birkin, Smoke Sip Savor. And what I loved about that was she brought together these cannabis chefs who were making these really incredible dishes. And it was all virtual because it was still the pandemic, but it was like a bracket style cook-off. And then like the winner won this cool prize pack. And so I was one of like the last like rounds. And when I started, I was going back through the other previous competitions to see like who were the chefs so that I could become friends with them on Instagram and see what they were making. And every single round, there was a really amazing, badass Asian chef, women chef, several Asian women chef who kept winning. And I was like, who are these people? And Wendy was one of them.
Yes.
And I just admired her, our other friend Hedgen, Big Bad Wolf SF, Monica Lowe, who's Sue Weed. And to see other women who were cooking with cannabis in the space, who looked like us, who reflected our culture, like that was so needed, and we didn't even know it.
Oh yeah, I just love how cannabis is able to bring us sometimes our best friends, you know? Because likewise, I think my experience was similar because I think I really started going harder in cannabis around that time too, around 4 years ago. And I definitely met some of my closest friends. I mean, Mary, she's like my sister. And I met her in 2020. And I think it's also this cannabis journey of ours. Like, I think it's led me to believe that like, it's not really the years that you've known someone, but it's the quality of time that you've gotten to be able to spend to someone to understand what their values are, what they, how they operate, how they love themselves and then in turn love you. And I think you're able to find closer relationships, through the plant. Isn't that beautiful?
It is. And I think because we both consume cannabis, and that's how Mogu Magu started. It was just us becoming friends, and we'd go and hang out at Wendy's house, and she'd cook this amazing food. Like, oh my God, being friends with Wendy and living like in the same neighborhood in LA is like the best part. Cause I get to go to her house and get high and eat amazing food.
This is a divine connection. I wonder if you guys, I don't know if you believe in this kind of stuff, but I wonder if you guys were friends in a past life.
Yeah,
because sometimes it feels like there are other forces that are sometimes align us with certain people. And I just, the older I get, maybe the more I feel that, where sometimes I'm like, what are the odds that you were put into my life at this particular time? Like, it's just sometimes, I feel like it's our ancestors. We said this last time, like our ancestors being like, you guys try this.
I totally believe in past lives. I'm all about it. But it was sort of that act of like, getting together, being really high, eating our like cultural comfort food. Because like I don't cook Asian food, Chinese food. Like I cook really, really good white people food because I watched a lot of Food Network and that's how I learned how to cook. And I worked with restaurants and I worked with a lot of chefs in my like career in PR.
Right.
And so everybody that I learned how to cook from was mostly European and white. And so hanging out with Wendy and watching her cook, like I joke that like she teaches me how to be more Asian, but like eating these comfort foods and then eating foods that like I have never seen before. I've never experienced because we're also from two different regions and our families are from two different places. But we just start talking about our traumas and all of our stuff. And there was so much healing that happened. And that's where Mogu Magu was born because we were like, if this feels so good for us, wouldn't other people would also love this? And so we started hosting more gatherings. So we did like a hot pot was the first one. So we gathered all of our friends who had like Asian cannabis brands to do a content day. And
when was that? When was the first event?
Was that the first?
That was like February 2022, I think.
Okay.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, it's been so long. But we also when we started meeting up and hanging out, I was pretty much like crying on Christina's like couch like the second time like I went to her house, because so much was just coming up. And it's like what you were saying, sometimes people who are, being brought together by fate and kind of like that divine planning, they come with message that you needed to hear, in that moment. Is like we're all vessels for certain messages, whether it's to an individual or to the world at large at that given time,
Right.
And so like so much of it was coming up for both of us in a way that we needed to hear those messages, and we were each other's vessels, So like how can we expand that to our entire community? And we have to give like shout out to Ophelia, who's
Totally.
our like weed rad as we mushroom auntie. She's the OG, and she started hosting these potlucks, and she founded Asian Americans for Cannabis Education, which was this incredible organization that helps to amplify not only Asians in cannabis, but also just educations around cannabis, and how
Right.
can we like spread that more in communities where there are more stigma. So being in a room, being so seen by other folks and each other, like we just knew we needed to replicate that. But
Right.
like, how do we do it in our own way too, to continue what she's built?
Wow,
Yeah.
it's so intention driven and I think purpose driven. I think that's something that I always reflect on, especially with my approach to how I build brands. It's just it has to be purpose driven. If it's just financial, there's a limit to how much you can do. And I think Mogu Magu, you guys do accept donations, right? So you guys do raise the funds to be able to make the experience, but also you guys put in so much time and effort to where it's like I hope that something comes for you guys. Sometimes in cannabis, like it can be all volunteering because we love it, but there comes a time where we do have to be able to pay ourselves a little bit. So I love that this has become a business for you guys, and you guys are able to put something that you just love and have so much purpose in, but actually make some like moves, like financial moves, some business jefa moves out here. I love that. So I started seeing what you guys were doing, and I think when cannabis is elevated in any way, I love to support things like that, because as a storyteller, as someone that is constantly trying to make cannabis be seen as the powerful industry that it is, I struggle with that sometimes, like even pitching editors or pitching partnerships with companies that are like, we can't associate with you when you're in cannabis. So when I see efforts in our community to elevate cannabis, I just am constantly like, that needs to be, empowered in some way. So I had this idea of doing a pre-dinner for our Latinas in Cannabis Summit. And of course, you guys know already, the Latinas in Cannabis Summit is a yearly event that happens the Saturday before September 30th, which is National Latinas in Cannabis Day. And so we wrapped up our second annual. But when I was planning for it, I was like, I want to have one event beforehand to really kick it off, a chance for all of the panelists, the workshop leaders, all the speakers and special sponsors to all get together and remember, again, purpose, the intentionality of what we're doing tomorrow. Also, I think that so many of us work so hard in this industry where we want, I think, an opportunity as ladies to get dressed up, to, look cute together, take some photos, but also eat good. And then as, we love our Latina community as well. We love our tequila. So I was like, how can we create an amazing experience? Like, let's do this. Layla, she has been in our community for years. She's a chef. I wanted to include her in the summit last year, but I couldn't do it. And I'm like, you know what? And I've been thinking about her. I was like, I want to do the dinner and have Layla cook it, but where am I going to have it? The Celestial Kitchen came to mind. But not only that, I knew that you guys had this special touch that I wanted to just absorb within Latinas and Cannabis, but also you guys do so much already. Like I wanted you guys to absorb a little bit of us too. And I think that that's what happened through the Latinas and Cannabis Powerhouse dinner. You guys really came in and helped us so much. You were able to use Chef Layla and Chef Jenny from your community too. But a Latina, of course, Salvadoreña. And I think you guys created just an experience that the girls are still talking about today. Can you tell us a little bit more about the Latinas and Powerhouse dinner and what you guys did to bring this freaking event to life?
Yeah.
Well, when you first approached us about it and you told us about Chef Layla, I was like, this is so rad, because it's a El Salvadorian background menu, and I just hadn't gone to experience that as much, here. And so it was really, really exciting. I always love cooking with another chef because, I've been like kind of running my own kitchen and my own private chefing for a while now, for like 8 years, I want to
Drizzle
say.
Catering, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so, like if you're not in that restaurant setting, a lot of what you're missing is that sense of camaraderie and observing what other people are doing and learning from other chefs and what they're bringing to the table. So I'm always excited to like kind of learn more about how another chef cooks, but also another culture through the food that we cook together and cooking. And that's like kind of the intention that went into designing that outdoor kitchen too.
Yeah.
It was always about how do we make it accessible and amazing for any chef to feel like their food can be represented. So there's so many different cooking styles that can happen in that kitchen. And so it's like such a chef's dream, and so when Layla came in, we kind of talked about a menu, what would be cohesive, what would make sense for the pairings, what would take everyone on kind of this like flavor journey of their palate, and how to make the flavors across the different cultures blend together, to feel like, oh yeah, of course that would be together in a menu, sharing the menu across different cultures. And so immediately we were like, oh, Chef Jenny needs to get involved. So Chef Jenny Flores has been another friend of mine who we met through sliding on the DMs. She sees what I'm about and the kind of like kitchen environment and vibe that I'm trying to create. And she's like, I'm about that. Let's like support each other and be other women. Because, the kitchen space, like the cannabis space, can be a little bit more, male dominated for most of the time. So being able to like create your own vibe and your own culture and attract other women who are about that has been really cool. So we've also kind of shared the kitchen a lot, and she's come to support nearly, I think, almost all of the Mogu Magus.
Yeah, essential.
Oh, I love that.
She's in the, like, I was looking through her photos, and like she's literally in the kitchen, like making every Mogu Magu event happen. Like her hand and her touch is a
Shout
part
out
of
to
all
Jenny,
of it.
Latina Cannabis right there.
Yeah, and she's an amazing chef, and so we always have such a blast in the kitchen. So she jumped on the menu too, and it was just so like, I was personally so excited. I was jealous of you guys. I'm like, man, I want to eat this meal. It was just so exciting. It was so fun. Every day I came out to the kitchen, Chef Layla was cooking there already, and the music was bumping. And the smells, she made a pan con chupe that actually had all of these incredible layers of flavors. I never knew like all of that process went into it, but then you were smelling cloves, cinnamon, wine, and like olives, like just incredible flavors and smells. It smelled like a Christmas at a Latina household.
Oh, I love it.
And
honestly, it really was an experience. Honestly, the presentation as well. Like, I just love how you guys are all so detailed, and how was the process of just collabing together on? Because you guys each had different meals, right? How was it building the menu?
Incredibly cohesive and easy. Everything just felt so easy because I think across both of our communities, people know what the assignment is, and everyone is just having so much fun because we're trying to all create that same kind of space, that kind of intentional space that supports us, and it's so rare that we're just so excited and geeking out over it, because as soon as like Layla came into the kitchen, like our energy level was like level 10 and matching, and and then like Jenny came in and we were just like, and they were riffing, and it was just like it was so organic. Whether it was on the phone building the menu or live cooking together or even just executing together, like we were all jumping on each other's dishes to help make sure everything came out hot and delicious and looking good. So it wasn't even like anything we had to premeditate. It was just like so seamless and organic, and you could feel the love, you could feel the excitement and the interest in each other's food and culture. It was just all love. It was so much fun.
We also had like cannabis experience included in it. So Christina, she helped curate like a lot of the cannabis kind of experience in relation to the food. Tell us a little bit more about what you specifically did.
Yes, I will do that. But also I want to add an intro that we didn't, a soundbite that we didn't get that will help explain what is Mogu Magu.
Yes.
So, we didn't get to that part. I got that.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. Take us back.
So, so when Wendy and I started getting together and hanging out, and Ophelia was such a strong influence in that, and both of us, all of us in this community, like we love Ophelia as like the rad mushroom auntie you didn't know you even needed to have, and she and the other aunties will say, filled in this space for us that our parents just can't. Our families cannot understand sometimes this cannabis side. They won't, like, they're not in that space. But having elders see us and say, I'm proud of you, like, whoa, like that was huge. And then so this idea of a Mogu Magu came up. So Mogu means mushroom in Chinese, and Magu is the Taoist hemp goddess of longevity. And the word Ma and Gu, so Ma is hemp. It's like the character for cannabis in Chinese. And then Gu is maiden or auntie. And so this concept of your mushroom weed auntie, and so now we started creating and hosting these events, and we started finding other collaborators who are also rad mushroom weed aunties in this space to create these cultural experiences. And it just started stacking and creating, and has really turned into this really beautiful community that we have now. And we also started exploring the stories and the myths of who is Magu, this hemp goddess who exists in Chinese culture, like ancient Chinese culture, who's just been erased. And so as we started discovering that and really finding who this Magu goddess figure is, she embodies a lot of these characteristics that we want to be. And so now it reminds us to see ourselves as the aunties, and we are, because we have to like set an example. And we hosted, and with Chef Jenny, last Christmas, we hosted a spicy tamalada. So we just did like a mashup, like how to make tamales. And it came about just because I was like, I want to know how to make tamales. Yeah. And so she was like, let's do it. And so I think that you had like some extra like bulgogi or galbi or something.
Wait, you made bulgogi tamales?
Yeah, it was a it was a cheesy galbi stew that we shredded, and so it was like a spicy galbi jim tamale. So it brought kind of that LA Koreatown like stew flavor to a tamale, and Chef Jenny made a more traditional one, and it was so delicious. And she also created all these other ingredients where you can like kind of DIY and mix and match, so everyone got to like kind of make the tamale flavor that they wanted.
Oh wow!
But that tamalada like sparked this thing where like, oh, it's like, Danny from my best friend's house was like, we're the next generation of motatillas. And we're like, oh shit. And so this, right, every culture has an auntie. And being that weed auntie is, I think, such an important role, especially right now with legalization and destigmatization. And like, again, like being there in a way that like you're sometimes like parents just can't. And so as we explored this Magu figure, she's famous for having, brewing the elixir of life in the celestial kitchen up on like the heavens of Mount Tai. And so every time we host a Mogu Magu gathering at Wendy's place at her secret garden, we try to imagine like, okay, as guests are entering this space, what does Magu's celestial kitchen look like? What does
Mhm.
it feel like? What does it smell like? And that, and like, how does it feel when you come in, and like, if we are the modern Magus, what does it feel like when you step into our space? And so that's why it was so fun to have you come in, because traditionally we've mostly done just kind of AAPI cultural events, but having you come and and hosting a Latina powerhouse dinner with you, I loved it because it felt like we got to welcome you and create and take care of you, right? The ultimate in hospitality and being a chef and like loving this world is that we want to feed people and cook people and make them happy. And you guys work so hard. You are jefas. And it's like, and sometimes like the healers and the facilitators also need to be nourished so that they can be like their souls can be filled to like then go the next day to like inspire others. And so it felt like such a gift that like we got to nourish you guys and celebrate you and all of the amazing, smart, incredible, wonderful, like hardworking people who are at the table.
Oh, thank you so much. And honestly, well said, because that was really the like a heart and soul of the event, is just wanting to give back to these women that work so hard.
Mhm.
And some of them are Canna moms and don't get this opportunity to go and eat like, chef inspired food, but served to them,
Mhm.
within a space where they can also smoke, and
Yeah.
and that they don't have to pay a dime. I raised all of the money. And so, yeah, let's talk about that real quick. Do you guys remember when I was like, this is what I want to do? This is my idea. Like, but I want to pay you guys. Like, I want to hire Mogu Magu. Don't forget that they are people that you can book and make
Mhm.
your idea come to life. And so I let them know, like, let's do this. Like, pitch me, like, what's the cost? Like, let me know what the cost is. And they ran the numbers. They let me know it's going to be blank amount. And I said bam. And I think as an event producer, fundraiser, what have you,
Magic
I took
maker.
that number and make it happen, right? I had that number and it was like my North Star. I was like, that's the amount of money that I need to fundraise to make this happen for the girls. And I sent you guys a message in all caps. And I said, funds secured.
But I think it's important to note too, it's not just a dinner.
Mhm.
I think when people think about, okay, I'm hosting like, a cannabis dinner, what Wendy and I do and the way we cook and the way we storytell and the way that cannabis is incorporated is so intentional. It's so specific. Like even for your dinner, we were talking about different flower sponsors, and Green RX was going to be donating like the flower and the joints and the pairings, and we're kind of working with the different strains and like the certain flavors and aromas and terpene profiles of flower match and pair really well with food, and it can accentuate and bring it out in like really wonderful sensory ways. And then sometimes they just don't. It doesn't work. And and I think the fun part about doing this with you is like I was thinking it was going to be one thing. We're like, all right, got this, and like here's what we're looking for based on other dinners that we've paired. And then it kind of came back and I was like, okay, well, what Green Label RX specializes in are like candy flavors.
Mhm.
So all of their strains are all candy. And I'm like, well, unfortunately, candy doesn't pair well with eggplant and all these other things, So I'm like, all right, what are we going to do with this? And so the pivot on that was now it's like, okay, like we don't need to force this.
Right.
The pairing then became about being a palate cleanser and an intention setter to like bring everyone together. Cause like we're all having a good time. You're eating appetizers, everyone's doing bong hits, but this is also a coursed meal that requires attention. There's storytelling involved. And so using their flower to now set an intention between the courses and do a little bit of storytelling, to also share a little bit of like our Mogu Magu-ness and like the things that we've learned, because what we talk about is specific to like our API culture, but we also know that like there's intersectionality and these issues also overlap in the Latino cultures as well. And like sometimes it's like it's nice to have someone to talk to about it, because a lot of people don't want to talk about it, aren't ready to, aren't aware. But once you're around a bunch of like people who also feel the same and are willing to talk to you about this, it's so healing. And so Mogu Magu is an AAPI culture, food, and cannabis collective. And the reason, like why we exist, like our why is to heal ourselves and each other. And we do it through these gatherings and these events by creating content, by telling more stories, like creating this type of imagery and this type of storytelling with our culture, our food, our traditions alongside cannabis so that it doesn't look so scary.
Yes.
And it fits us for our needs today.
It's very educational. I think that you guys, like you said before, intentionality of getting something specific out of it instead of just gathering and smoking weed. Like, yes, that's happening as well. But what more, right? And so the Powerhouse Dinner, man, like we haven't even dropped our official recap. We're still finishing that up. We're finishing all our content. So there's just so much more to drop. But the girls did a lot of recaps. And so shout out to Yessie, one of our panelists. She did amazing videos of each chef kind of introducing one of their meals. And I think she did a phenomenal job of just kind of whipping that up for us. And so it's been great to see the feedback, both in content and actual feedback in general. A lot of it's positive. We had one comment that was, I think, constructive feedback, right? Not even, it's more like just feedback of just a genuine question of wanting to learn more. Can you tell us a little bit about this feedback?
Oh yeah, so we kind of heard that someone who's kind of been to our events and knows us really well was wondering, like, hey, like why are two Asian women being featured and highlighted in a Latinas in Cannabis Summit Powerhouse Dinner? Wouldn't that space be better celebrated highlighting a Latina chef? And so it's like valid. I mean, even at the dinner, I was kind of giving a speech and I was saying, I was like, surprise, we're imposters, we're not Latina. But why? Like, why are we here?
Yeah, I think it's incredible privilege to be like immigrant and a children of immigrants, and be part of the diaspora, living in America, growing up in America, because so many of us come from other home countries that our parents may be from, or maybe we're even from. And when you're from those home countries, you tend to look at other Latinas or look at other Asians, as that nationality. You don't really have that kind of camaraderie in Asia that we have here across Asian Americans, because we have that shared experience. So America really is, as they say, the melting bowl, but it's also such a forefront of the social engineering because you do not have cultures coming together in this way, in throughout American history, of different immigrants settling here and the stories that they bring and the culture and history that they bring. And so for even the term Asian American didn't always exist, and most of us don't identify as Asian American. We identify as our home, like our culture of origin. So for me, it would be like Chinese American, because I don't share any Korean culture other than hanging out with my Korean friends and getting to share their culture, but together we like the Asian American term was even coined by these Berkeley Asian American students because for political like solidarity, because together the numbers are greater and our voice is louder and our influence is louder. So it's kind of a double-edged sword because in one way you don't identify as that, but it can also sometimes be a tool to have more of a greater impact on the movement, on spreading certain narratives. And I think that's kind of what's happening with our collaboration too. And with like different working class Latina communities and Asian communities right here in LA working together to get certain policies passed, to get things happening. And so it's really, on top of being really, really fun when we collaborate, I also think there's that kind of greater impact when we have allyship across, both of our communities.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. And I think getting also in the spirit of allyship and education and like I think just destigmatization, right? Like with alongside education as well. So it's just beautiful to see our communities come together. And we're doing it again, guys. We have to, because people, like I said, people are still talking about our dinner. People are like, when's the next dinner? And I'm like, okay, well, hold on. We had this idea of doing something for Dia de los Muertos. And so you guys know what Dia de los Muertos is. It's a really important time in Mexican culture where we honor those who have passed on. And so it comes with a lot of rituals and celebrations attached to it. I actually had the privilege of going to Mexico a few years ago during Dia de los Muertos, because my birthday is on Dia de los Muertos,
Wow.
which is one of those things that are divinely aligned for some reason, because I have this important connection to Dia de los Muertos, and that it's just now kind of hitting me, and I'm processing it all, because like we touched on before, there are some things that happen in our lives that make us kind of sit back and think like, there's a reason why all this happened, you know? So many years ago, for those who don't know, I have a master's in journalism. I studied journalism for some time, and I was doing this story about Dia de los Muertos. And I was covering specifically the cultural appropriation of the sugar skull. And so this story went in about the history of the Los Muertos, but I also interviewed this. I went to Olvera Street. If you go to Olvera Street and by now downtown, they have a lot of the Los Muertos events starting even now and leading till the second week of November. And so I went, and I just went on my reporter vibe, and I went just to see which interviews I could find. And I wanted to interview someone that was doing the face painting. And I wanted to ask her about cultural appropriation. And I had specific questions like, how do you feel about when you paint, white people's faces that don't have no idea of what they're doing? Do you have a calling to educate, or do you just kind of accept it? I happened to interview someone who's a little bit younger and very interested in talking to me. Let's just say that she had very strong opinions about this. Her name is Laura Hasboon, and I was able to interview her, and I got some really great footage of her face painting some kids, and she was very vocal and talking about how she does not like the fact that people come here before going to a party because they want to be a sugar skull for Halloween. I have no idea that when you paint your face of that skull, you're calling upon a specific ancestor to live through you for that night. So there is a intention behind the paint. And so that whole project taught me more about Dia de los Muertos than my own family did. And that happens a lot in our culture, where we're not passed down these stories. It just doesn't happen. I remember telling my abuelita when I went to the Dia de los Muertos festivities in Mexico, I asked her, I'm like, why do I have to learn about Dia de los Muertos from Coco? Like, why is
It's a beautiful movie.
It is a beautiful movie, but I think part of the reason why I was bawling my eyes out is because I'm like, this exists in my culture. This is freaking cool. Like, Dia de los Muertos is cool. Like, it's freaking badass. I understand why these white people are like, love it. Like, let's put it on this, product, or this, and this, and let's exploit it. And it's cute. I get it. But and this is part of my story, when we forget about the origins of what this culture represents, of all these festivities, that's when it becomes culture appropriation, because that's the big question. What's culture appropriation? What's not? And I think that the line, it really has to do a lot with appreciation and really holding space for the people who really live that culture. And I think when you exploit, imagery or just festivities, but don't remember, the culture and the importance of it all, that's where it can kind of be like, okay, is it appropriation, or is it the celebration? So we wanted to do this event. We ended up calling it Plantas y Calaveras, Plants and Skulls, as an event to celebrate Dia de los Muertos during one of the days that it's celebrated. There are fests that are around in LA, but also bring that education piece, because I want to educate people like I was educated, right? And that you have to protect this culture, protect these festivities, and bring that intentionality behind it. And so I did this story 2018, 2019, around there. I was faced with a situation in 2020 that really put into perspective that situation. For those who don't know, La Chingona Cannabis, look it up. Won't talk about too much on it because there's a whole LA Times front page article.
It's a real news. It's a good story, Matt. It was a page turner. I remember when I didn't know you as well, and I didn't get to hear the story from you yet in person, but I read it and I was like, oh, damn, I want to know this person. I want to meet her.
Thank you so much, because it was a very impactful experience. It was one of the first ethical dilemmas that I was ever faced with cannabis, and I thought that was going to be my last one. But there are just so many. It's still a growing industry, and with that comes a lot of bad actors, bad work, bad business. And I think that that's been part of the journey that I've gone on, is meeting so many amazing professionals, but maybe some that maybe aren't. And so it's been interesting, but I think that the La Chingona experience, I wouldn't have been able to do that in the way that I did without the previous education journey that I took through journalism. And journalism really is such a way to take in and learn so much from other cultures, other communities, because it almost gives you the opportunity to take a dip, learn, and then come back out in your own life. And I love journalism so much. But yeah, Dia de los Muertos has a big, I think, part of my life, and I think it was meant to be that way. So doing an event like this, it has more meaning than I think people know. It is a kind of a birthday celebration, but that's definitely not the focus of it. We want to educate. We want to give people an immersive experience, a sensory experience, so that they can understand the meaning of this holiday in a really great way. Let's talk a little bit about the elements of this event, because it's not just smoking weed, right?
I wanted to add a thing too. I remember watching the video that you shared, and that's what sparked me to ask, like, just kind of prompt the questions like, hey, would you want to do a Dia de los Muertos like event together? Because, Wendy and I talk about Mogu Magu is very much, this intersectionality. And it started off with us celebrating our Chinese holidays because that's all we knew. And then it was like, oh, wait, there's more to the A's and the P's and the I's. And then that's when we started branching out, even just to discover our own. And our own curiosities is what fuels all of this. We're like, I just want to learn more about this. And I think, I saw Coco. I fucking love Coco. It's a great movie. But like, I want to experience a Dia de los Muertos, and I want to learn about it, but like, I don't know how. So it was kind of like this way where I was almost like, hey, I saw that video and I really love that. And I'm like, how can I learn about this from you? How can we make this concept of a Dia de los Muertos celebration alongside cannabis in a Mogu Magu style happen and create this level of healing
together
across both of our communities and allies too.
And going back to the cultural appropriation, I've been thinking more about that lately, just because, like, as long as we've been doing Mogu Magu is, on top of appreciating the culture. And, and recently there's been that whole internet breakout about the boba. Okay, I looked that up too. Very interesting. It's got me thinking about this element of inviting in. And because I always think about who has access to even appropriate the culture, who's getting the funds to start whatever businesses they want to and use and borrow from whatever culture they want to, and how is that a symbolism also for colonialism, and colonization and the impacts of our communities from colonization. So I think about this power dynamic of who has access and how, part of not being cultural appropriation is you got to make real connections with the people of that community and also be invited in. And so the person doing the inviting, creates more of a power balance. So it can't just always be like, let me throw some dollars at you to do the thing I want to with your culture. It has to be a appreciation, education, and learning about, and also how you amplify and create more of a power dynamic that is more equitable with the culture you want to learn from. How do you allow create space for them to invite you in, right? And so that's a huge part of it too, I think, to be, we're so grateful to be invited into your space and be able to share with others cultures within the community too.
Oh,
And
yeah.
what I love too in talking to you about Dia de los Muertos and getting excited about this in our own research, like I learned that in the Philippines, like there's a Filipino Day of the Dead called Undas. And so that comes from its Catholic heritage and it's celebrating All Saints Day,
Yeah.
which I suspect also
Yes.
comes from a little bit
Yes.
from the Mexican heritage as well. But like that's really neat. Like Filipinos also celebrate a Day of the
Mhm.
Dead in very similar manner. And then
And
we
Chinese have Qingmingjie, which is
that-
also like a day of
is
like
that the hungry
celebrating.
ghost or different?
I
So we also
No
so we
pop
learned
quiz.
this. Okay, so this kind of like what you're saying like earlier with our friend Sue Ranchera Mommy, right? Like I also did not really appreciate and come into wanting to be curious about and learn about my own Asian and cultural heritage until very recently, honestly, kind of alongside cannabis and Mogu Magu and being friends with Wendy and all of this kind of provides a really fascinating channel for me to learn about it, which is why
Yeah.
I like want to host these.
Yes.
But I also learned like we hosted another one with our friend Maylee and she brought this really beautiful ancestor like paper burning ceremony. And it was about, you know, expressing and recognizing our gratitude to our ancestors, saying thank you and letting it go. And she also taught us about like a hungry ghost festival. I'm like, shut the fuck up. We have a hungry ghost festival and it's in August and it's very similar. And she was telling us about it. I was like, doesn't this sound like Dia de los Muertos? Which is why I think it kind of led to us having this
Yeah.
conversation. Because it's like, yeah, like you put out all these foods, the favorite foods of their
Yes.
beloved past ancestors, and you invite the hungry ghost to come in and they celebrate for this day. And I was like, I want to throw a hungry ghost festival.
Oh, I love that. You should definitely do that next year.
Yeah.
You have
Yeah.
to. Let's put it.
It'll happen.
Let's
It's
put it
kind
into
of
the
the
universe.
For
time.
sure.
It has to.
And the
Timing.
symbolism of your birthday landing on
Mhm.
Dia de los Muertos, it's so
Yeah.
like that. It's so meta. You know what I mean? Death
Yeah.
is not really death. It's this continuation and they live
Mhm.
on. And, you know, that's very much big in Taoism. And so when we started exploring Magu, it was that similar feeling that you were describing of seeing something in your culture that was never taught to you, that you actually relate to and feel so seen by.
Yeah.
You know, because Taoism is super feminist and it's all about decentralizing power.
Mhm.
A lot of like feminizing consciousness kind of principles that we talk about in cannabis
Yeah, yeah.
show up in Taoism, which is why no surprise that Magu is the figure that comes from Taoism.
Wow.
You know, so and she's the protector of women, and like so much of Taoism is about like uplifting that kind of feminized consciousness and
Yeah.
sense of leadership too. So being seen by our own culture that way has been really incredible, you know, in that
Yeah.
cultural exploration too.
Oh yeah, I mean, learning about Dia de los Muertos, I feel like I've learned so much about myself and my family because when I went to Mexico for this trip, you know, I remember my grandma saying, she's like, I know, eso da miedo. And that's like, no, that's scary. When I asked her about Dia de los Muertos, she's like, that's scary. We don't do anything like that. So I was walking around my family's pueblo, their like small town, and I came across people getting ready for some kind of festival. And I was like there with my boyfriend's mom, and we're walking around and I'm just like, oh, that's really cool. And I actually had just graduated from journalism school. And so Bobby's mom was like, my boyfriend's mom was like, she just graduated. She's a journalist. And I was like, pipe down because I'm not trying to work. And someone heard that and they were like, oh, well, she can interview you. And I was like, I'm not even doing a story. And I was like, okay, you started this, you're holding the phone. I ended up doing like a video piece on the fact that there was this festival that they were doing in my family's hometown. Turns out my family's hometown has the Guinness World Record of the tallest Catrina in the world. The Catrinas are those giant, like the sugar skull people. And like their festival is like amazing. I felt like I fell upon this like amazing travel story that I just had to produce. I mean, I had the skills for it. So, I mean, check that out on my Instagram too. And it really, Dia de los Muertos, I'm telling you, it has something to do with like my purpose on this earth. I don't know what it is, but we're doing this event and it's a lot more special than you guys even know. You have to go.
Yeah.
Some elements that we're having. So we are having, check this out. This is another divinely orchestrated thing. The face painter that we booked to do our face painting is the same face painter that I interviewed for the initial news story that I did. Laura
That's
Hasboon.
amazing.
Yeah, art by Laura. She's gonna be coming through. Make sure that you guys come through. And get your face painted. She's gonna be doing half Catrina face painted so that you aren't just sitting there the whole time.
Yeah.
And
But
we're
also
just gonna
be
have so
intentional.
much. Yes.
Be intentional, right? She's going to paint our faces. And as Susie said earlier, this is about you are embodying the soul of the person that you are inviting to come to this party. So we'll also have a communal ofrenda. We're asking that if you'd like to bring a picture, it doesn't have to be the actual photo, maybe like, Photoshop it or not Photoshop, sorry. Maybe photocopy it or print out a paper version. But we're asking people bring, an image of the person that you would like to invite, whether it's a family member, whether it's a friend or whoever, your dog, a pet. Yes, but, pets, for sure. Come with that intention so that when you come and you get your face painted, who are you inviting. And when you told me this, I was like, I'm inviting my grandma. Oh, because
I'm inviting my grandpa. My grandpa passed just this last year, so it's like we're bringing them to the party. Yeah, like we're bring your people. To the party.
And I think for me, what it's so meaningful is I get to bring them to the party, but also like my grandma would have loved this. I think part of a lot of the guilt that like I carry as like a child of immigrants and all this is like the sacrifices that our families made for us to be here. And like I think about my grandma and what like the things that she's told me, and it's like she would love she couldn't even fathom that this is what life could be like. Wow. That like, so to invite her to be able to come and see this, and like I recently like have acquired all the vintage like all my grandparents stuff, so I'm like trying to figure out which one I want to wear so that like she can like wear her outfit and come dance and like it's gonna be so beautiful.
I love that. That is gorgeous. Oh my gosh, you guys, the level of intention that's gonna happen at this event. I mean, so with my grandpa, like I want to bring him to this event because my grandfather was probably one of the biggest machistas ever, which you see that a lot in Latino culture. My grandpa, he's just the manliest man like ever. And I think I want to bring him to the party and show him all this feminine power, And I think that I remember when I first started doing a lot of activism, my grandmother, she said something to me that like I still think of today. She was like, "Hey, who taught you this? Like, where did you learn this from?" Because that's just speaking up and doing something about it is just not something that happens in our at least in our family household. And it's very common for a lot of first generation Mexican Americans where, my grandfather was the man of the house. My uncles were the men of the house and the women were the women. And my grandma telling me that, like seeing my career, seeing like what I've done and created, she's told me like, where did you get this from? And like, it was like, I guess school, like I really am like a very school oriented in that way, but like, it's just, I will never forget that, So I am bringing my grandfather there. I'm really great. Maybe he can hang out with your grandma. Yeah. And so other things that we're having at this event, Chef Jenny's coming through again. Tell us a little bit more about what she's cooking up.
Actually, what is she? I've been in China. She's been doing all the coordination.
That's true. So she's going to be doing
Chef
a lot.
Jenny. So Chef Jenny is going to be leading the menu on this one, and we get to be her sous chefs, which is fun because she's a part of our community, and for her to be able to contribute this and cook her food, and for us to support her, like we are so excited because we also I just want to learn. I want to learn how to make pozole and tamales, and she's going to do a choco flan, and we're also going to do an indigenous grazing board, which I'm so excited about.
Yes, so this is an idea that I've had for a minute, and I was like, because I just love charcuterie. That's my shit. Like a little glass of rosé, little prosciutto with some brie. All day. It's my favorite thing, like little things to munch on. And when I thought about this event, or just indigeneity in general, like wanting to celebrate that and honor that, Dia de los Muertos is an indigenous holiday. It's pre-Hispanic and it has so much to do with kind of holding space for that part of our culture. And so I was like, indigenous charcuterie board. Like, I love that for us. So I'm just excited to see. So, quesillo, which is some specialized Oaxacan cheese we're going to have donated by one of our sponsors, who I'm going to talk about right after this. And we're also going to have some nopalitos, some cactus, some skirt steak, which is, it's a special kind of steak that's very thin. It's Oaxacan steak. And just a lot of really fun things. I'm so excited for her to really take the lead on this.
And we got the chapulines.
The chapulines. So chapulines is it's cooked grasshoppers. A lot of times in Mexico they'll put that in the guacamole, or you put it in a good taco. It has a lot of protein. Usually if you just close your eyes and just kind of
It
it's
tastes like
fine.
peanut skins.
It really does. But you know,
Totally.
if you look at it, I can see people maybe not being a little. But when you come to the event, come with an open mind. Come with intention, like I said, and try some chapulines and check out that indigenous charcuterie board. I'm really excited for the food. Just like always.
It's gonna be so good.
It's gonna be so good.
Yes,
Yeah, what
that's
else
gonna
we
be
got?
good. And shout out to Ivan. Yes, I'm actually gonna say that again because I'm always like Angeles or Angeles. But okay, so we're inviting our partner this year. For this event, we're inviting Madre Los Angeles, Ivan Vasquez. Yes, shout out to Ivan Vasquez and Madre Los Angeles for being a part of this event with us. They are going to be helping us out with bringing some ingredients, but they're also going to be doing a mezcal pairing. So Madre Los Angeles, they have a few locations in LA. Their Torrance location is the one I've been to, and they actually have over 400 types of mezcals at their restaurant. So they actually hold the record of the most in the nation.
Wow.
So if you guys are ever
Wow.
interested in learning about mezcal, Madre is the place to go. It just is. So the guests that will go to our event, they're going to be able to partake in a mezcal tasting. So he's going to be giving us a few bottles to taste, and he's going to be doing an educational experience to let us know about mezcal, how to order mezcal, how to drink mezcal. It is not in a cocktail. I'll tell you that right now. Yeah. He will tell you the right way to drink mezcal and how to really honor it, the history behind it, how to distill it, which is not the same way as tequila. It's a whole different plant completely, you guys. Agave and maguey, like it's a whole thing. And so he's going to break it down. He's a really good speaker. I've been to one of his events before, and he really is all about honoring this way, that like this alcohol, this spirit, and not just that, but tequila and other spirits as well. But he's been very open about this. He's been gotten offers by a lot of companies, and he's turned them down because he's not trying to support like the Kylie Jenners of alcohol here. He's trying to bring it back to the roots. So he's definitely a fighter in his own right, and I look to him for all things mezcal, tequila, and food because his restaurant has really good food. So shout out to Ivan. Thank you for being a part of this event, Ivan Vasquez of Madre Los Angeles. It's going to be seriously such a fun event. And what other things are we having? A gift table?
Yeah, we've got the gift table of abundance.
Yep.
Because if you come, I mean, the tickets are only $50, and you're getting a mezcal tasting. You're having this. You're gonna have an amazing
Actually, with mezcal and
experience.
food, that's already over $50.
Yeah, and the food.
Yeah.
And you know the food's gonna be great. You've got a gift table of abundance that is gonna have so much product for you guys to grab.
And a bong bar. Don't forget about the Mota Glass bong bar.
And
We're
a
gonna
Mota Bar. Yep.
I mean, all you can smoke. Like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me?
Yeah, we're gonna have amazing flour from some of our favorite farms. We'll have our favorite Tina Moonmaid Farms is gonna provide us some flour. We're chatting with a couple other brands. Pure Beauty is a Latina-owned brand. Sunbright Gardens is another great sun-grown that we love. And then the shop I work at that is also Latina-owned, Cornerstone Wellness, is going to be doing a pop-up shop with a curation of Latina-owned brands. Latinx? How do you pronounce?
Well, now there's a
What do you
movement
say?
to get away from Latinx or Latinx.
What's
And now it's
appropriate?
Latine.
Latine. Okay,
Yeah.
so Cornerstone Wellness is curating a Latine-owned brands pop-up shop. So if you want to support some Latine-owned brands, they're going to be there. They're also in the Northeast LA area. We'll have it at Wendy's Secret Garden. Also, shout out to our other sponsor, iSpire.
Yep.
Thank you so much, iSpire, for supporting us and always supporting Mogu Magu. They're going to be providing batteries for everybody to take home, so you can get a little freebie fun battery.
Yes, so tons of freebies. I'm really excited for this. Also, I just love that like I'm gonna get to spend kind of this time around my birthday with so many friends and colleagues, just celebrating too. And I think that it's been such a fun time, just building this event with you for Christina and you as well for the Latinas and Cannabis Summit. And I'm excited to do round 2 because I already know it's gonna be a great time, and I'm already excited to see the recap footage. You know.
It's going to be so cool.
Yes. So tell the people where they can find you guys and follow you guys and anything you guys got going on.
So you can follow Mogu Magu on Instagram at Mogu, MOGU, Magu, MAGU.LA. If you want to be the first to get invites to our gatherings, to our events, sign up for our email list on our website. That's mogumagu.co. And personally, I'm at Fruit and Flower on Instagram, and you can find me on Substack. You can find my website, fruitandflower.co.
And you can find me at Chef Wendy Z on Instagram. And you can also find me at drizzle.catering if you want to book me for events.
Yes. Book Mogu Magu.
Yeah. And that was what you were saying earlier, like, how do we make, not like we're doing things that are nonprofit, but how do we make money? And I think this is it, right? It's not about monetizing on creating these community gatherings. Like our community gatherings, like we're just trying to make sure our costs are covered, and we're trying to like pay people to like, as they contribute and help like cover their costs.
Right.
And if there's any extras too, we want to make sure it's going back to Mogu Magu, and we want to give it this freedom to be what it can be. We're currently also working on a travel series and a film.
It's a travel docuseries.
All BIPOC women film crew. Some really cool.
You guys shot it this summer. I remember seeing that.
Yeah,
but a different one too.
Ooh,
We're also working on a film project that we are trying to raise grants for and things like that. So like a lot of the fundraising efforts doesn't just go to us, and creating these events. It's also about these future projects, because I know being such a expert in journalism, that it's about the narratives, and what's going to uplift and give our communities more opportunities and more access is us being at the forefront of what this narrative is. So we also want to see Mogu Magu translated into media across social and film and all types of avenues in a way that's like progressing the narrative. So we're going to be working on some really, really cool, fun projects. So the one you were talking about, the travel series, was so much fun to film. And like all of our creative endeavors, it kind of started with just this tiny idea that starts to snowball, because it actually kind of started with Tina and Christina and I hanging out in my house after one of the Mogu Magus, and me telling Tina that I've never been up to Humboldt. I've never really traveled and seen these
visited
farms.
a sun-grown cannabis farm.
That
and
part
I was like,
too. Because being in LA, because she was like, "What? You haven't like?"
I was like, "What do you mean you haven't been to us?"
Well, you can just go to Cornerstone and get all the best sun-grown there.
And in
also,
LA, that's not really the conversation. That's not what people are going into dispensaries asking for and talking about. I feel like it's way more developed up in NorCal and other areas, but in SoCal, we're not really having that conversation, but it's so important. And the analogy we always talk about is like, you can have, Tang or like, Simply Orange, or you can have fresh squeezed orange juice from the oranges from the farmer's market,
Sunkissed, is that still around? That's just like orange, like
orange.
Sometimes orange soda is perfectly delicious, and there's a time for it. And
Christina
as long as but I think that's the point, is that like we get to make choices that aren't good for us. We are allowed to do that.
Yeah.
But know that that's the choice.
Oh yeah,
making.
like I will intentionally get Cheetos sometimes. I know it's crap. I know it's not good for me, but I'm going to make that decision every once in a while, and it's my decision to make, right?
Yeah.
I love that.
Once in a while, okay. Every day, probably not great.
Yeah.
But so like this travel docuseries we filmed, it was because we were like, hey, let's go on a road trip to go visit Tina. Like, we want to go visit Tina. And then like, it was just kind of this fun trip that then slowly turned into a 10-day road trip visiting other cannabis farms and other places. And then we filmed a travel docuseries, and now we have all of this footage, and we're going to edit it into something and it's gonna be called In Search of Magu, and it's us really navigating our space and our world and trying to find this wisdom in Magu. And in this particular like season, I guess, of what it's gonna be, Tina from Moon Made Farms is our Magu, and we are going in search of her and climbing our proverbial Mount Tai up the Humboldt Mountains to see where this is grown. And it's just such a magical trip. The whole trip, just from our perspective and doing it, was just so magical. Like, we can't wait to edit this together and show people what this is like, because we also packed up the car as like a traveling kitchen, and Wendy like cooked this amazing meal for each of our hosts along the way.
Yeah, we used things that we brought from our kitchen. So, you know, at the Secret Garden Club, we grow a lot of our own produce, a lot of stuff from my travels, as well as like different fruits and veggies that I got growing up. So a lot of different varieties that you're not seeing in the grocery stores. And so we're bringing a little bit of Mogu Magu, and we're also taking what's sun grown there at the farms. And we're doing a pop-up like dinner for the farmers there and having these beautiful conversations about sun-grown cannabis. And so it's like, how do we take this Mogu Magu world and reinterpret it in all these different experiences and stories, so that people do see there's so much commonalities and ancient wisdoms that we already have, that we need to be leading in cannabis, and that with those kind of intentions.
Yeah. Well, I love it. I can't wait to watch all of this content, and so can't you, I'm sure. Yes, I'm excited to do so much with you guys. Get those tickets. We can get those tickets on Partiful, right? It's on the Latinas and Cannabis Instagram page link. Also Mogu Magu. Also, I put it on mine as well, Susie Green and Susie Plascencia. That's where you can follow me. And thank you guys for coming. This is amazing.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
See you guys next episode. And that's a wrap.
Oh.